People don't remember the loudest brands. They remember the one that breaks the pattern. In this video, we'll be covering the isolation effect and how to separate yourself from everybody else in the market. The truth is, it doesn't take much effort at all to stand out from the rest because everyone is trying to look the same and everyone just blends in with the rest. So doing something slightly different gives you a big advantage over everyone else. We'll be covering why this is really important, especially for your brand. So let's get into it. So the truth is, doing something slightly different to everybody else makes you twice as memorable as everybody else, if not more. So the odd one out wins the memory. And there was a research done, and it basically isolated items that were recalled roughly twice as often, and those were the ones that were slightly different to everyone else. So the distinctive thing that captures attention first is the one that holds it. And people remember things that are different from everything else because everything else just blends in, and the one that's different and has a slight edge wins every single time. So you need to look at it like this, for example. In a crowd of people, you need to be the exception, and the exception of the rule is the one that wins and the most memorable of them all. So keep this in mind because this will actually make you stand out from the rest and give you an advantage over everyone. And you can see on the right, the one that's in red and the one that's slightly bigger than everything else is the one that screams the loudest. And it's not just because of the color. If you take the color away, it's the one that's slightly different to everyone else, even if it's just the size. Like one distinctive thing about it, capture your attention right away because everything else is like a sequence of the same repetition over and over again. Even if you look at the example on the right, the far right, you see a lot of circle and then you see the one square in the middle. And the one square is actually where our attention goes because everything else is like rounded. And then the one that has got the straight edges, the square, is the one that we look at first. And no matter how many times you look at the ones around it, the circles, you will just eventually come back to the middle because that's the one that's different and that's the one that stands out. And even if you place the square anywhere else, it will still get the most amount of attention because it's the one that's different and your eye will go there directly. And this is the same thing for the brand that you have and the brand that you choose. Imagine you're on the same street as all the other barbershops, for example, or dentist practice. Your one stands out from everyone else because you took that extra time and you did something different to what's really familiar. And everyone is doing the same thing, same font, same style. And your one is slightly different, not by a big margin, just slightly. People actually remember things that are different and they remember things that spark the feeling. If they can have a reaction to your design and your branding, then that's a really good thing because they're most likely to remember it. Moving on to the next point, any different works. So in these examples, you can see isolation comes from anything and it just depends on the color. So for example, a color that nobody else owns, a round mark in a world of sharp ones, you basically just need to do one thing that's the complete opposite of the norm. And this basically makes you the loudest of all the other brands and gives you the most amount of attention. And basically what you're doing is breaking this usual convention that everybody else follows. Doing something outside of the norm will give you this edge and advantage over everybody else. And this mechanism isn't volume. It's basically contrast between everybody else and all the surrounding. So the truth here is quiet and different beats loud and typical. So keep that in mind. So principle number 3 is that this is all relative. So the effect here is entirely relative to the context. So you can only be the exception if you know the rule. So you need to know what everybody else is doing and do something slightly different or slightly better than them to stand out. So this means the real work happens before you design. So you need to see the competitors, study them and see what they're doing. And you need to find the common denominator between everyone and what they're doing and do something that slightly breaks that rule. So you need to see what they're doing in common and then find the one rule and be that one exception that breaks it. So the main rule here is make sure you do the study and the research beforehand, before you design, because then you know what you need to do to stand out. And you need to write down all the common denominators between what they're doing and everybody's repeating the same thing and see how you can be different. Then you have enough information to go from, and then you can start the design process to create this difference that you need to stand out. Okay? So here you can see that it's all relative to the sequences. So here you can see on the first example, you could see all the bars. And then the one in the middle that's like slightly taller and in red is the one that speaks the loudest and is slightly different to everybody else. And this is the one that gets the attention. Same thing with the red dot in the middle here. And you can see the one that on the right, and none of them take the attention from each other because they all blend into each other and everything looks the same. So you need to basically create a little bit of advantage over everyone else and think of how you can be different. And it doesn't really take much effort or energy to stand out. You just need to do something slightly more than them. So think how you can beat them. Just like you want to be better at providing a little bit better service than the other businesses that are exactly in your niche, You want to do the same with your branding, because the branding is what brings them to the door and the one that brings them in the first place. So if they don't feel like they can trust your brand or they can trust you as a business, then you can't even show them your service and what you offer in the first place. You need to get them in the door, and this is through your branding and standing out. So make sure you do that first, and then everything else can carry on in your business and your service you deliver. And one of the key things here is to make sure you're not doing multiple different things. You just need to do one little thing that's slightly better than them, that's slightly different to them, but speaks the loudest. And you need to do this well. You don't really need to change 5 or 10 different things to stand out, because the truth is you only need to do 1 or 2 main things that stand out from the rest. So if you change everything, then you're just being too noisy and too loud and too difficult to understand in the first place. In order to pull this off effectively, you need to change 1 or 2 things maximum, and you need to do this really well. So think about what's the most important rule you can slightly break, the most common denominators between everyone else, and do this one thing slightly different to everybody else to stand out. So you just need to pick one point and commit to it fully. So distinctiveness is one bold choice held really well, and that's it. So you don't need to overcomplicate it. Just do one thing different to everyone else, and that's it. And let them figure it out. They will find this difference if you do it well enough. If you want a brand that people can't help but recall and remember, click the first link in the description, and I'll be happy to jump on a 30-minute free consultation call and see if I can help you in any way that I can. Thank you guys for watching my video. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you very much.